Set high above the beautiful Conwy Valley in North Wales, Bodnant Garden is regarded as one of Britain's finest historic gardens. Covering around 80 acres, its landscape ranges from immaculate lawns and formal terraces to wooded valleys, streams, meadows and towering trees. Yet the garden we see today wasn't created by one person or even one lifetime. It is the result of more than a century of ambition, experimentation and plant collecting. The story really begins in 1874 when Bodnant Estate was bought by Victorian businessman and industrial chemist Henry Davis Pochin. Pochin had made his fortune partly through developing a process that allowed the brown rosin traditionally used in soap manufacture to be clarified, helping manufacturers produce white and coloured soaps. By the time he arrived at Bodnant, he had the money and enthusiasm to transform the landscape surrounding the house. He employed respected landscape designer Edward Milner, who had trained under the great Joseph Paxton. Together, they reshaped the grounds, planted exotic trees and conifers, and developed the wooded valley below the house. The contrast that still defines Bodnant began to emerge. Formal gardens close to the hall gradually giving way to much wilder landscape as the ground descends towards the river. One of Henry Pochin's most endearing creations appeared in 1880. The famous Laburnum Arch stretches for about 55 metres and for a few weeks around late spring and early summer becomes a spectacular tunnel of hanging golden flowers. Designed with Edward Milner and inspired by the covered garden walks of earlier centuries, it is believed to be the oldest and longest surviving Laburnum Arch of its kind in Britain. Today it has become perhaps the single feature most closely associated with Bodnant Garden. But the Pochin influence was only the beginning. Henry and his wife Agnes's daughter, Laura, married Charles McLaren, who later became the first Lord Aberconway. Their son, Henry McLaren, the second Lord Aberconway, became one of the most important figures in Bodnant's development. During the early years of the 20th century, the garden immediately below the hall was transformed by the construction of the magnificent Italianate terraces. The formal lawns, pools, walls and pergolas created a very different atmosphere from the wooded valleys below and provided carefully framed views across the surrounding landscape. Work continued until the outbreak of the First World War brought major development to a halt in 1914. Henry McLaren was fascinated by plants arriving in Britain from previously little explored parts of the world. He supported the work of the great plant hunters of the period, whose expeditions brought back seed from places including China and the Himalayas. Magnolias, rhododendrons and many other exotic species were established at Bodnant, eventually making the garden internationally important for its plant collections. Generations of gardeners then had the difficult task of discovering which of these unfamiliar plants would thrive in the comparatively mild, wet climate of North Wales. Some plants were crossed and developed here, producing the distinctive Bodnant hybrid rhododendrons, for which the garden became particularly noted. The combination of plant collecting and careful breeding means that Bodnant is more than simply a beautiful garden. It's also a living collection representing a remarkable period in British horticultural history. Among the most distinctive sights of the terrace is the elegant Pin Mill. Despite its appearance, it wasn't originally built at Bodnant. The Georgian building had stood at Woodchester in Gloucestershire, where over the years it had several purposes and had eventually fallen into disrepair. Henry McLaren rescued it, had it carefully dismantled and transported to North Wales, where it was reconstructed at Bodnant in 1938. Standing at the end of the canal terrace, It now looks so perfectly placed that it is difficult to imagine that it ever belonged anywhere else. Away from these formal terraces, Bodnant changes character dramatically. Paths descend into wooded areas, glades, and the deep valley known as the Dell. Here streams, water gardens and mature trees create a landscape which feels far more removed from the carefully ordered gardens beside the hall. The old park and furnace meadow introduce yet another character, with more open views and a sense of wider country estate that once surrounded the garden. Then in 1949 another important chapter began. Henry McLaren's second Lord Aberconway gave Bodnant Garden to the National Trust, helping to secure its future while maintaining the family's long association with the place. Successive generations of gardeners have continued to care for its historic trees and plants while developing new areas, opening more of the landscape to visitors. Today Bodnant is a Grade 1 registered historic garden, but perhaps its greatest appeal is the extraordinary variety contained within those 80 acres. Within a single visit, you can cross elegant Edwardian terraces, stand beside an 18th century building transported hundreds of miles to its new home, and then disappear beneath a canopy of trees planted by generations of gardeners. And overlooking it all is the landscape of the Conwy Valley, a reminder that Bodnant was never intended to be viewed simply as a collection of individual flowers and plants. It was created as a landscape, one that has been shaped, planted and carefully handed down through generations, and which more than 150 years after Henry Pochin arrived here, continues to grow and change. Unexpected pleasure.